Right, I have a 2011 Ford Explorer. I'm going to be replacing this front CV axle here, and I've got doing a lot of other work to it, so just disregard that. But the first thing I'm going to do is get it jacked up and remove the wheel here. I'm going to be using a 3/4 on these lugs. It works the best without sticking. Okay, of course you want to break these loose before you lift the vehicle up. Just going to finish spinning all these off of here. And make sure you got jack stands and wheel chocks before you go to removing any tires. We'll go ahead and take this off. Okay, with the wheel off, we're going to push this cap out. Okay, now we're going to put the wheel back on. A couple lugs will be good enough. Okay, get yourself a 32mm axle socket and a breaker bar. Okay, you'll want a long cheater pipe. You also want to lower the weight back down onto the wheel. So lower the jack back down and break this loose. It's going to be really tight. Okay, with it loose, let's go ahead and finish spinning this axle nut completely off of here. There's your 32mm. Okay, let's go ahead and get the wheel back off. One of the first things we'll want to make sure of is that we can push the CV axle back. Okay, so it should be somewhat movable. We're not going to be able to push it completely back, but it's a little bit, we know that it's not hung up. Okay, now we're going to be taking this whole brake caliper off. Let's get an 18mm. It's going to be pretty tight. We got this one here on the top, and then we got one down on the bottom. Go ahead and get the one on the bottom loosened up here. Okay, if you can see where I'm at on the bottom. I'm just taking this whole bracket from the knuckle. Okay, we got both of the bolts out. You can see here. Just going to wiggle this up and off of here. Set it there a second. Okay, now we just took a bungee strap and just strapped our bracket up there out of the way on that spring. Okay, now we're going to get to work on these here. You just have to have a 21 on this side to hold it, and you need a 24 over here on this side. An extended ratchet or breaker bar will be necessary here. It's going to be really tight. So we're just going ahead and taking these completely loose. This is just the top one. Let's take the nut completely off of there, and then we'll get on that bottom one. There's that first one. I'll just get on the lower one down here and take that nut completely off. Okay, now before we can push these out, we want to make sure, like I said, this is going to push back. We don't want this knuckle and the weight of this falling down and pulling on this right here. If it pulls on this, you know, if you're not replacing it, it's going to ruin it. So if the purpose is, you know, just to take it out and you're needing to do something else, then you don't want to damage it. So make sure you don't get it in a bind, because then it's going to actually pop it out of that socket. So we're going to be careful. Make sure that we push it back as we're pulling this down out of the knuckle. Okay, so I'm sliding out the bottom bolt. We'll lift up and try to get this top bolt. Now another thing I'm going to do over here is pop this little ABS sensor off. There's a little rubber boot right here to give that slack. Just pop that out of that little indention right there. Okay, now I'm going to push back on this CV axle as I'm allowing this to drop down below these notches here. I want to make sure that I keep the CV axle supported so if we're not trying to damage it. And then we'll also get it up here and kind of support it a little bit while we work on the next part. Okay, we just have a little bungee strap holding it up here, and it's just run around that. Just hold it while we're working on this back here. So now we're going to get back here using a big crowbar, just a common crowbar, and we're going to get back here and we're going to get behind this and pop this out. Okay, you can kind of see where I've got it running behind there. We're just going to use a little bit of rocking motion. I'll quit hitting the camera. Okay, and there we go. Popped it loose. All we got to do is pop that clip. Now have you a pan ready? Because there's going to be a little bit of fluid leaking out. Okay, and here's the CV axle out. Now we just got to work on getting a replacement. There's that clip that holds it in there. Okay, getting ready to put the driver CV axle back in. I put a little bit of grease on here, assembly lube. Make sure to put a little transmission fluid on that before you go back in. We're just getting ready to go back in here now. It's pretty easy. We're just going to slide it right back in here. We're going to go ahead and support this. With one hand, we're going to take our rubber mallet and hit the end of this till it snaps right back into there. Okay. All right, we're going to hit the end of this with rubber mallet. And there you go. It's nice and solid. We're going to go ahead and slip this back into here. We're going to get a little grease on here first, though, a little white lithium. Okay, we're going to go ahead and slip this in. Make sure to support the knuckle and the CV axle. I'm going to get it up into place here. You got to go under these clips. I'll just get one of them started here. I'm going to have to push this back. Okay. Yeah, we're going to get our CV axle nut on. We won't be torquing it down until we get the wheel and everything on, get pressure on it. Okay, I'm going to get the nuts back on here, and we're going to take our 24 millimeter on this side. We're going to hold this side with a 21. Okay, it's just working on the top one here now. And you can also get this over here and get it propped up against something while you're turning it. Alright, just going to slip this little ABS cable back in. Okay, make sure to get these really tight. I was using a breaker bar. Just torque those down really tight. You'd at least need to go 130, if not more, on those. A really big bolt. Okay, now we're going to get the brake caliper back on. We just got to get the two bolts going into the bracket, the 18 millimeters, and we'll Loctite those. Okay, I got the caliper slipped on here. I've got my bolts, some Loctite. We'll go ahead and get on to the back side and get these started. We'll get the top one and then we'll just get on that lower. Okay, we got the lower one. Go ahead and snug this one up. The 18 millimeter. Okay, now we're going to get this upper one and tighten these like 130 foot-pounds at least, or just get them really tight. You know, sometimes I don't fuss with torque on every little thing. I just make sure that it's really tight where it's not going to go anywhere. Okay, we're just going to snug this up a little bit. Like I said, when we get the wheel, this is a 32. When we get the wheel on there, we'll go ahead and finish torquing it on down. Or if you don't have a really, I mean, these call for like 180 foot or more, so if you don't have a torque wrench that goes that high, just get you a breaker bar and get it really tight. Okay, now we're just going to go ahead and get our wheel back on. Like I said, we get the wheel on, we'll go ahead and give it the final torque. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get the lugs back on, and like I said, we'll finish tightening that axle nut. Okay, with the tire on the ground, go ahead and finish tightening down this axle nut here. Got my big breaker bar, and then we'll go ahead and tighten our lugs down to 100 foot-pounds.